Okay, no intro. This video is going to be the chunkiest of the 4 videos. In this video, we're covering the crucial setting context that your characters would know about the starting area that you guys are going to be in. We're not going to discuss deep lore, cosmology, creation, none of that crap. We're not talking about gods. We're talking specifically about practical information that your characters would have about the region that the first adventure is going to take place in. Okay. Step one is an extremely brief history of the empire. Okay. By which I mean 2 sentences. Ready? Here we go. Um, the empire was created by a series of wars that lasted for 40 years, and they ended 20 years ago. So all the nations were brought under one banner, and that empire is only 20 years old. Only one kingdom, the kingdom of Gattaca, to the west of the empire, was able to resist that process. And the reason why it was able to resist that process is because it has a series of just brutally insane mountains and oceans surrounding it on all sides, like Sweden. It's basically impenetrable from any kind of military sense where you're going to be supplying materials and men to the front. And that's your imperial history for the day. The immediate area surrounding, excuse me, where you guys are going to be starting is the border region known as Northern Sararid. This region stretches from the northern coast of Andraste to the southern tip of the Sararid Mountains, which is the same mountains that I mentioned before, right? This border zone is a hotly contested neutral area where both nations claim to have ownership over the mountain range that is the actual physical border. And so they both have border patrols and units basically securing that area. And they've been carrying on a minor proxy war of skirmishes between the two sides basically ever since the Wars of Creation ended. These raids and skirmishes are carrying on, and they make life for the people who live in these already extremely difficult alpine climates even more difficult than it would be otherwise. To the point that these people who are hardy and loyal and have incredibly tough living standards have started to turn on each other because the only support that they get is support from whatever nation they happen to live on that side of the mountains of. At the base of these mountains is the Kirihara Forest, which is Orcish for stinging forest, and it's more colloquially known as the Sea of Trees, right? The Sea of Trees is this just massive portion of the region, on the eastern side of the mountain range. And it's the subject of lots of local legends about ghosts and monsters and elves and stuff like that. The western side of the mountains is mostly badlands flowing into desert to the south. You will notice as you look at the map that it really only includes widely known locations, and that's kind of intentional. I wanted the map to have a quality to it as if it was created by somebody in the setting. And so it doesn't really have a lot of stuff on it other than large cities and geographic markers. That's not to say that there aren't other people living here. As you guys travel around through the hexes, you may very well find a small hamlet that's very close to subsistence farming and only has, 12 families on it. But generally, you're going to find things on the map that would be communicated to a cartographer in the capital city of the empire by some far-ranging scout or merchant trader who's half remembered it from his journal entries, that kind of thing. What you'll notice, even according to the map, is that Santorini is easily the largest setting for a long way in any direction. And most of its function has actually changed in the past 20 years since the empire's creation to become about craftsmanship to change from fishing and craftsmanship over to border security. It's governed by a general factotum who's responsible for managing not just the city itself, but also the troop movements throughout the entire region and keeping peace along the border. He has the full support of the imperial crown, and has all the authority you would expect that gives him. He can empower judges, he can empower tax collectors, he can do all that stuff. His city is rumored to house a large number of mercenaries and bandits and pirates, and that's mainly because if there's any kind of assumption that you're carrying on these otherwise unethical practices, but you're doing it against our enemy west of the border, then there's no reason to stop you. And because of that, there's some rumored belief among people who live in other townships and cities that Satyrine is kind of a hive of mercenaries and pirates and other types of shady folk. Litha is the next largest city and is maybe a tenth the size of Satyrine with its 100,000 people, right? Litha's way smaller than that. It makes its living mostly as a luxury exporter of fine Ceylon fur, Ceylon honey and brandy, mead, Ceylon wax for candles, tapestries, that kind of thing. It's actually the only place in the world that's able to reliably produce these products in any kind of quantity that would allow them to sell. And so that makes Litha very valuable, even though, kind of everything that it does is, I don't want to say abnormal, but it's definitely, kind of on the fringe of society. There's not a lot of people who would choose to live there, nor are there a lot of people who can afford their products. Kihana is the only other active township that you'll see on the map. It's a robust farming and ranching community, known for its unique and extremely advanced practices with irrigation that enables them to produce a huge surplus of foodstuffs. The people who live there, I think, would probably rather be known as breeders and raisers of fine stallions and oxen, but they can't step away from the money that they're getting from the empire to subsidize Satyrine with their food supplies. So they don't. I've also placed Ornstein on the map. Ornstein is a very small commune located near the edge of the Kirihara forest, and it's the subject of your first adventure. It's maybe 5 days walk west of Litha, and that's pretty much all I can tell you about Ornstein. But you'll notice that it's a ruin now. So what else can I tell you about the starting area? Much of the area here is, you should see it as temperate, right? The continent of Andraste it's about midway through the southern hemisphere. And so as you approach the northern border, the northern coastline of the continent, you approach the equator. And so the area where you guys are in is actually relatively warm compared to other places. Yeah, that's about it, I think. Yeah.